Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to IDG Live. Today we are carrying on our series of looking at the Stark children and we are going to be looking at Robb Stark. I don't know which shoulder he's peering over at the moment, but we're going to be looking at Robb Stark today. We've done Arya and Sansa and Rickon. Now we'll do Robb, and I think next week we will do Bran. So I think it's basically the same as we normally have. I won't be doing a sort of a full rundown of his life because I think we know most of it. I think the only thing that I would highlight just as we're getting into this, as I've tried to do with all of the Stark children, is to emphasize that TV show Robb is a lot older. A book Robb starts out as 14. So what we're dealing with here is somebody who, right from very early on, from when he's 15 or so, he's faced with some of the most stressful, demanding circumstances that you could possibly imagine. His father goes away, and he's probably not going to see him again for a very long time. His mother leaves him as well, heading off down to King's Landing. His father is killed. He has to call the banners and then has this huge battle of wills with all of these very strong-willed commanders, lords of the houses in the north. He has to lead an army into war. He is engaged to somebody without his any say in the matter, and he falls in love. We will deal with that in a little bit. Do not worry. And everything comes crashing down around his ears. He has to deal with so many different things that are just going wrong. So I think the first thing to be said is that we often interpret Robb through the lens of the TV show as a grown man, a young man, but a grown man dealing with all of these issues. In the books, he barely makes it to 16. Um, he's very young, very inexperienced, having to make this up as he is going along. And in the main, he does really well. He does some things probably poorly, some things that perhaps he could do better. But given the weight of things that are thrown at him at such a young age, he does kind of bear up under the pressure really quite well. Okay, so what we'll do is I've got a whole load of questions, as always, from my patrons. I will pick up as much as I can from the chat as we're going through. But let's start with a question from Ryan's Orcas saying, "Hi, Robert. Does Robb's body make it back to Winterfell? Any part of him, or is it just his crown that survives in the hands of Lady Stoneheart? If so, it's such a shame. With no POV, no place in Winterfell, nothing. Am I mistaken? Correct me if I'm wrong. And love to the moderators. Yeah, well, if you're watching this live, please do give the moderators a little bit of love straight away. So, in terms of his body, he is obviously killed at the Red Wedding. What happens immediately after that is that the Freys mock him, basically. Having killed him and killed Grey Wind, his direwolf, they then take off Grey Wind's head, kind of staple it onto his Robb's shoulders, and then they parade that around the yard. Because obviously he's a Stark connected to direwolves. He was known to have an incredibly strong and close relationship to his own direwolf. So this is them kind of mocking him. What happens to his head? We don't know. What happens to his body? We don't know. We're not told. So we don't get a POV in the twins after that moment. We get a very brief look at what happens outside afterwards with Arya. Don't forget, Arya appears with the Hound. They appear at the twins just as the wedding's about to happen, and it all starts going very wrong, and they have to turn around and head back really quite quickly. But we don't see what's going on afterwards. We know that Kat's body was thrown into the river. the working theory there is that that was a mockery, in the same way they did a mockery of the Starks by putting the head, the wolf head on the human body. They did a mockery of the Tully burial rites, as it were, which we'd seen on the show, basically putting them out onto the river. And here they just threw the body into the river. Now, that's obviously backfired for them because of the fact that she comes back. But what about Robb? Well, as I said, we don't know details about what happened. We can guess or speculate on a couple of things. His head, Joffrey, as king, wanted it. Now, as it happens, the Purple Wedding happens quite soon afterwards, so he's not around for very long. But he repeatedly says that he wants Robb Stark's head, and so it seems reasonably likely, although we haven't heard of it arrive, it seems reasonably likely that it did make its way towards King's Landing. The body, some have suggested that maybe that too was thrown into the river. I probably would guess that actually they might try and do a little bit more of a mockery of the Starks, put it underground in some tomb, something like that. I don't know. Some have suggested a rather dark idea that maybe Roose Bolton might want to have claimed it for, well, you know what the Boltons like doing. If you want another dark idea, as another mockery of the Starks, perhaps they could have fed it to the dogs. I think the idea, though, that in any way, shape, or form, the Freys decided to reverence this body, to care for it, look after the bones. I think that's for the birds. I think that definitely has not happened. The Starks are no longer in control of Winterfell, so why would you send the bones up to Winterfell, even if you were minded to? There's literally no reason why you would do that. And Walder Frey has already thrown out every social convention he can with the Red Wedding. I don't think there's a way that easily that his bones are going to head up to Winterfell, which is a shame. The only chance is if the twins falls and some sympathetic force find them, but I don't think it's likely. I mean, it's quite a downbeat way to start the stream, but I don't think it's likely that we're going to be getting a happy end in some way for Robb Stark's bones. So, friend, saying happy Thursday, Robert, and to you too. And to all others who have their stage play tickets booked. Yes, a lot of people have been saying here that they've got their tickets booked for the Mad King stage play, which is opening in 2-3 months' time. It's all very exciting. I've got my tickets. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the stream. I think you've said before, says Sir Friend, that George has indicated that he's wondered if he should have had some Robb POV chapters. Do you think this might be because there is somehow more to Robb's story than we immediately think, or simply because his POV on the story would have been a particularly interesting one? Best wishes, warmest regards, and to you. So, yeah, I had a quick look. I couldn't immediately find the exact quote from George R. R. Martin, but he has definitely said that, yes, with retrospect, perhaps he could or should have done a Robb Stark POV. He didn't. And he didn't for good reasons. It wasn't just a randomly forgetting to do a Robb Stark POV. The first reason was that he wanted the claimants to the throne not to have POVs. So we don't have a Joffrey POV, we don't have a Balon Greyjoy POV, Stannis POV, Renly POV, and we don't have a Robb Stark POV, because he wanted those figures, the people who could be king, indeed, also Robert Baratheon, the people who could be king, he wanted them to remain a little bit mysterious. We're slightly uncertain of their motivations, and he liked that idea. So you're seeing this through the people surrounding them. I've said many times that this is a story being told through the eyes of the 1%, which it absolutely is, the Westerosi, the top tier. But it's not the very, very top tier, because the people who would be king, within the context of the War of the Five Kings at least, we did not see their perspectives. Now, the other people who might be king, like Daenerys, Queen, or Jon, potentially, we do have POVs for them. So this was just an early, setting the scene early on, that he didn't want that. The second thing was that he already had a lot of Stark POV characters. Now, if you think back to book one, now we've got, what is it, 20 odd outstanding POV characters, but back to start with, we didn't. We had, who did we have? We had Bran, Arya, Sansa, Ned, Cat. That's 5 Starks already, plus Jon, of course, makes 6. Then we only had the 2 others, being Tyrion and Daenerys. This was already a very Stark-heavy POV first book. And what that meant, incidentally, is that the reason why the Starks have our sympathy is because we saw so much of this from their perspective to start with. We hardly saw anybody else's perspective. Dany is out on a completely different continent, and then we just have Tyrion, and we see Tyrion in a lot more of a sympathetic light, because we see things from his perspective than perhaps George R. R. Martin would, as I say, would want us to, would expect us to, given the things that Tyrion has done, some of which are incredibly dark and incredibly nasty. So seeing things from a certain POV does instinctively make you side a little bit more with that person, because you understand a little bit more about where that person's coming from. So that's the second thing. He's very clear. There were 5 main characters to start with, that we were going to be following their story all the way through. Robb wasn't one of them. He then had to just structurally work out, who are the other POVs that I need in order to tell this story? Which bits of story do I need to pick up? And therefore, who do I need to be there in order for us to understand everything that's happening in this plot? So that's the second reason. The third reason is because he has said he thought it would actually be more interesting to see Robb's story not through his own kind of POV, but through his mother's, primarily. A bit of Bran as well to start with, but primarily we see what Robb is doing and what he's going through his mother's perspective, which is a different way of doing things. We're so used to having this younger, usually male, potential heir to the throne who is, we see things from their perspective. Here, he's wanting us to see that person through somebody else's perspective. So those were the reasons that he's given for why he decided not to. As I say, it wasn't just he forgot to. He did then, sort of express a general feeling for wishing that perhaps he had done. Why? Well, because he could have shown a little bit more about what was going on with Robb, what the strategy was, what the plan was. He could have shown us a little bit more of the link with Grey Wind, for example. It would have rounded out this story a whole lot more if we could have actually seen more of what was happening in the war. Really, it's noticeable. You see it actually in the first season series of Game of Thrones, the TV show. It's noticeable they don't really have the budget to be doing the battles much, so you kind of just see the aftermath of a battle here, or Tyrion gets knocked out straight away, and so we don't see the battle. We get a story which is sort of devoid of battles, but some of that is in the book. We don't actually see. We hear early on Robb's going off, and he's had a battle here. He's had a battle over there. He's charged off into the Westerlands. He's defeated an army over there. We don't actually see that in the book. We just sort of hear about it happening off the page. So we would have got a little bit more of that. Right, let's go to Carl Karstark saying subscribe to History of Westeros, which I agree with. Is there a reason for that? Is it not? Aziz isn't in the chat or nothing, is he? No. Okay. Let's go to a question from Craig. What do you see happening to the Riverlands portion of Robb's kingdom? Will the next ruler of the North claim the Riverlands? Who will rule the Riverlands at the end of the series? Right, so in case you sort of missed it or kind of overlooked it, yes, Robb is declared king in the North. That's a thing. But the Riverlands lords also bend the knee. So he is the king of the North and the Riverlands, but that's not quite as cool a thing to say. Now, he obviously loses the Riverlands relatively swiftly. The story of the last couple of books, particularly Jaime's chapters, incidentally, is how the Lannisters are reclaiming after the phrase, the Red Wedding, the phrase of switch sides, how they claim all the castles. And it's, I really enjoy those chapters from Jaime, and he's just, you see how competent he actually is. He claims Riverrun, he claims the Blackwoods, Raventree Hall, and several other places, one after another, often without actually a battle. And he is just his father's son, just very clever and very competent in a way that most people within that world don't see him. They see him as, yes, he might be a good battle commander, but really he's a fighter. Not he's a clever manipulator of people, but he shows that he's that as well. So by the time we've reached the story where we're at, the point in the story that we're at now, basically that's all gone back to belong to the Lannisters and the Freys. So the River Lords, theoretically, they bent the knee to Robb, but that's all now disappeared. And as far as anyone's concerned, House Stark has gone. Robb's been killed, Ned's been killed, Bran and Rickon, as far as everyone's concerned, have been killed. Sansa's been taken out of the line of succession by being married to a Lannister, and Arya, well, she has disappeared, but everybody's pretending that she's now married to the Boltons. So House Stark, to all intents and purposes, has gone. So what's going to happen now is, as it always is, it's going to get quite messy in the Riverlands. We've got so many of these different groups. I say this whenever I talk about the Riverlands, is that George R. R. Martin, he can change the way this story goes simply by changing the order in which these different groups meet each other. But we've got Lady Stoneheart and the Brotherhood Without Banners. We've got Nymeria's super pack of wolves. We've got the Riverrun garrison of a couple of hundred soldiers. We've got the Blackfish. We've got Jaime and Brienne, who are there. At some point, we're going to have probably Sandor Clegane is going to be reappearing. We've got an offshoot of some people from the Brotherhood Without Banners who left it because they didn't agree with what Lady Stoneheart was doing. We've got so many of these different groups who could meet in different ways and different times. Jaime he brought an army up with him. There's now a train, sort of a wagon train heading off west to the Westerlands. There's so much that is potentially happening there. But I think that for the next book, The Winds of Winter, is going to be showing us bit by bit the revenge of the Starks. I don't know. sounds a bit Star Warsy. You know what I mean. This is going to be Lady Stoneheart getting her revenge. It's going to be Nymeria's super pack, who, when you actually look, they're mentioned every now and then. And what are they doing? They're taking out a Lannister soldier here. They're attacking some Freys over there. This is guided in a way. Arya may well be returning there. So I think we will start to see that fall. Now, while that's happening, probably Winterfell will fall and the Starks will reassume control over there. Will whoever's in charge there, and we will talk about Robb's will a bit later as well, but will whoever is in charge there claim the kingship of the Riverlands? Possibly. But the reality is that the situation is going to be so messy, and the focus is in the north is going to be so much on the others are coming, that it's going to be pretty negligible. It doesn't. The impact will be negligible. It won't make a big difference to anything. At some point, we're going to get young Griff and co, who are going to be they're claiming kingship over the Seven Kingdoms, so they'll be claiming that area as well. We've got Littlefinger, let's not forget, who is now Lord of Harrenhal, and we're going to have Dany arriving very some point with a very large invasion fleet. So there are going to be so many people who have some sort of claim to the Riverlands. So I don't think that it makes any difference at all who claims it or doesn't claim it until the threat of the others has been dealt with. Will whoever ends up at Winterfell at the end claim it? Possibly. I think that the thing is that whoever's there, it might, if Sansa, which is my current favourite for who might be ruling in the north at the end of all of this, it's entirely possible that Edmure is going to be still alive and will sort of take up his place again in Riverrun. Might she tell him that he swore to Robb, therefore he has sworn to her? I mean, I guess she could, but let's not forget that the Isle of Faces is in the Riverlands. And if we're accepting that Bran is going to be the king of on the Iron Throne, effectively the king of the Seven Kingdoms, I think he'll want the Isle of Faces to be in his patch. So probably not. That's probably it now, I think. Let's have a quick flick through the chat. Just Strovel, thank you very much over on Facebook. Great to, if you are there on Facebook watching live, by the way, hi, I see you. I will at some point figure out how to do moderation and get involved in the chat over there as well. But I can see the comments in the chat over there, so it's great to see you. Lady Pushkin saying I've recently been watching The Last Kingdom. I've been watching that recently as well. It started off solidly good. In my opinion, it's been getting better. I'm about at the end of season 3 now, I think, maybe. It's been getting it better every season. Right, let's go to a question from Roman Lakovitz. How much of Robb's success in the Whispering Wood was due to his own merit versus the mentorship of the Black Fish? Okay, so this is the first big battle that he won. The plan, if you remember, was that everybody was expecting Robb to be marching his army down the King's Road, easiest way south. He negotiated, or his mother, Cat, negotiated a way across the Twins. That's a really wide river. really fast flowing. There's no other way to get across all the way down to pretty much where the inn at the crossroads is, near there. And so they negotiated for a small, fast-moving force to be nipping across to the west side of the river and then charging down basically cross country, and they would arrive at outside River Run before anybody's expecting them, and they could launch a surprise attack against not the siege immediately. They did break the siege a bit later, but the first battle was against Jaime Lannister's army in the Whispering Wood. Now, was that due to Robb's military prowess, or was that due to mentoring by the Blackfish? The Blackfish came with him. Now, I think we're given a few facts here that we can work with. The first one is that this does seem to be, broadly speaking, Robb's plan. He took advice from people, but broadly speaking, the leadership of not just this but the entire campaign was him. He took advice, but he was leading on this. The second thing we're told is that the Blackfish, who knows that part of the world incredibly well, was in charge of all of the scouting ahead and making sure that nobody saw the army on its way south. So that bit we can definitely give to him. When we actually get to the Battle of the Whispering Wood, in terms of individual combat, Robb definitely seems to have acquitted himself well. I doubt that anything that the Blackfish could have been teaching him on the way there would have made the difference. That was only a relatively short period of time. Robb was brought up, trained by professionals in Winterfell. He was a good fighter. Incidentally, we are I can't remember exactly where, but we're told that comparing him and Jon, he's slightly better on horseback. Jon was slightly better just with a sword. So if you're looking at the sort of the comparison between those two, that's where they kind of stack up. And Robb, with Grey Wind at his side, was a redoubtable fighting force. So how much of this can we put down to Robb? The overall plan and being good in the battle itself. How much of this can we put down to the Blackfish, the making sure that the plan, they're getting there, worked efficiently and effectively, and how much of that is the Blackfish mentoring Robb? I would argue not huge amounts, but some. GG saying thank you for all you do. I watch all and rewatch it again. Also, props to the mods. Well, thank you very much. I hugely appreciate that. Yeah, props to the mods indeed. Tommy of Then saying some leaders were brilliant tacticians in their own right, but I doubt many of them would credit themselves for their greatest victories. Yeah, so Robb, I don't think I've got a question on this specifically. We often give the overview about what happened as Robb was good at the tactics, then Tywin Lannister was good at the strategy. So Robb won the battles, Tywin won the war. And overall, yeah, I think that's entirely right. But you do have to ask the question whether, if things had been slightly different, Robb's strategy might have worked. Because his strategy, having taken River Run, was he took his forces out to the west and he started attacking the Westerlands, the Lannister homeland. He took out a Lannister army near to Casterly Rock. He got really quite close. And his idea was that he would be able to draw out Tywin Lannister's forces to bring them back, that they would have to defend their homelands in the Westerlands, and that would free things up for the bulk of Robb's forces, which were being controlled by Roose Bolton, to be heading south because Tywin was kind of blocking the way. And Robb thought, and when I hear that Tywin's come towards me, we've only got a small force, we can kind of like sneak our way around and blindside him and get past him. It nearly worked, in as much as Tywin did eventually abandon where he was in Harrenhal, and he headed off to the Westlands to go and do exactly what Robb wanted. So that didn't work because Edmure stopped him, which I don't think I've talked about this a lot before, but I don't think we can completely blame Edmure. Robb's angry with him, but I don't think we can completely blame Edmure because he wasn't told the plan. But B, and I think even more importantly, they were overtaken by news about what happened with Renly and Stannis, and that made Tywin turn back. I think, realistically, even if Edmure had allowed Tywin to head over, then over the river, the news would have caught up with Tywin and he would have turned around anyway. So, because he knew the greater prize was getting that Tyrell army on his side. Now, what that means is that Robb's plan did not work because of events outside of his control. It was an incredibly high-risk strategy, and the longer he stayed in the south, the higher risk it was, because he wasn't going to be gaining any more troops. Each battle, he would have lost some troops, and his supply lines would have been even more and more stretched. The moment that you got the Lannisters and the Tyrells together, their army was so huge. Eventually, they would have defeated Robb. Let's go to a question from Relaxed Like a Cat saying, "Hi, Robert. I hope you've had a good week." I have, thank you. I was just wondering whether you think we will see a more animal than Robb animal in the remaining books of A Song of Ice and Fire. So I'm assuming this is a sort of a comment about the idea that Robb is a skin changer. George Martin has confirmed all of the Stark children are skin changers. He clearly had a strong bond with Grey Wind, but when Grey Wind was killed as well, might his spirit have then found another animal to go to and stayed there? And we know over time that the kind of the second life of the skin changer, they slowly get subsumed within that animal, so they become less and less like themselves and more like that animal. There's just like a sort of an echo of them there. Bran has, in his training chapter up in Bloodraven's cave, there's this it's really quite eerie. The whole chapter's really quite dark and eerie, it has to be said, but that he is encouraged, he's talked about skin changing and basically said, go up into these birds there. Bloodraven tells him to go up into those birds there. He does. He goes up and he realizes that there is still a child of the forest inside most of these, just hidden away, barely there anymore. And as I say, it's quite eerie, but that's the way that George R. Martin writes what happens to the skin changer, is that they go for their second life into a bonded animal, and then they slowly fade. So, is that going to happen? Well, I think the answer is no. And I think the answer is no because there's something else which is going to be pulling at Robb's soul, and that is the Winterfell crypts. Now, this is just a probably for two reasons. Firstly, because we do not know all of the details about how that magic there works. And secondly, because we don't know, it might be broken. Now, I'll talk you through what we do know. Obviously, the there's something going on. I did a whole series on this, if you're interested. But there's something going on in the Winterfell crypts. The legends are that the Stark lords, their spirits are bound there with the statues. Their spirits are bound there. Every time characters go down there, then they feel as if the statues are looking at them, and the language George R. R. Martin uses is just it's like they're alive. That we hear about the statues are watching them, the statues are judging them. It feels like the statues are moving. That all the time the statues seem alive. Almost certainly that's because the spirits have been bound in there. Now, we have one case study that we know of a Lord of Winterfell who dies and what happens. And we see this in a Bran chapter just after his father dies, after Ned dies. And he has this dream that his father is in the Winterfell crypts. So it would appear, did Rickon. Maester Lewin obviously he dismisses this. No, of course, that's just nonsense. You're just missing your father. But Bran insists, so they go, they have a look. Hodor refuses to go in. He doesn't want to go in. George R. R. Martin's confirmed it's not that he doesn't like the crypts, it's just this one moment in time he didn't want to go. Summer, Bran's direwolf, he was holding back too. You can sense it. So when they go in there, Rickon is already there. He's made his way down there. He says, yes, my father was here. Then the end of the chapter is we get the Raven. Ned Stark is dead. This is showing us that we do get the spirit of Ned Stark has come back to the Winterfell crypts, or it pulled back from King's Landing, where he died. Now, there seem to be three elements that we need. We don't know what kind of mix this is. We need the spirit to come back, we need a statue to be there, and we need the bones. Now, obviously, the bones do not need to be there in order for the spirit to be pulled back, because Ned Stark's bones, at that moment in time, they were still in King's Landing. Now, they're somewhere between King's Landing and Winterfell, probably in the neck. But the spirit got brought back. So, as a kind of a default position, we would expect that Robb Stark, as the successor Lord of Winterfell, when he dies, his spirit is also going to get tugged back to Winterfell. And we were talking a little bit earlier about the bones. How important are the bones? The bones appear not to be important for the calling back of the spirit. The calling back of the spirit seems to be almost immediate. The bones may be needed to bind it there. They may be needed to help, if my theories are correct, animate those statues at some point. We don't know. The other bit we don't know is the extent to which this magical mechanism has been broken. Now, there's a couple of possible points here where, if we're going with this idea that there must always be a Stark at Winterfell, and that is connected in with this magic, this kind of foundational magic that is storing up all these Stark souls down there in the crypts, if there is not a Stark at Winterfell, does that break the magic spell in a way? Bran, when he's leaving Winterfell, he looks back and he thinks that Winterfell's dead, or second thoughts, it's just broken. So maybe the spell is broken there. The second point at which that might have happened was, I've mentioned before about the winter at Winterfell. Winter has fallen at Winterfell. You read the last few Theon chapters. This is not just a bad snowstorm. This is horrendous. The snow is falling so fast, Theon puts out his hand in front of him and he cannot see his hand. The snowdrifts outside the walls, they're 40 feet deep. That's about 12 meters or whatever it is. Really very, very high. 6 of the 7 gates to Winterfell have frozen shut. There is so much snow. When Theon is leaving Winterfell at the very end, he kind of pauses and looks around. He thinks, I can't even see Winterfell. It's been buried under all of this snow. It's as if Winterfell's not there. That snow seems to have been triggered by the marriage of fake Arya to Ramsay Bolton. So there's a few different possible trigger points that might have broken this spell. But Robb Stark's spirit very probably has been called to the Winterfell crypts. It's just that we don't know it because we've not got anybody in Winterfell at that moment in time. It's Bran and co have left, and we haven't got Theon and co arriving yet, so we've got no witnesses. But presumably the same kind of thing happens when Ned Stark's spirit arrived. Let's go to a question from Iliana saying, hello, Robert, and thank you for all the fantastic content. You're very welcome. Did Robb drink a love potion while staying at the Westlings and recovering from his wound? That is one of the major plot points in the War of the Five Kings, and George R. R. Martin has left it so ambiguous. Why is that so? When I read the books, I had completely missed the link between Maggie the Frog and Jane Westerling. If Tywin Lannister had really orchestrated all of this, he is really a political genius. Well, yeah, I think he did orchestrate all of this. We get a lot of hints on this. For those who've missed it, I did do a video on this, but for those who missed it, Jane Westerling, the woman that Robb marries, falls in love with very quickly, sleeps with very quickly, and marries very quickly. She is the daughter of Lady Sybel Spicer, who is the granddaughter of Maggie the Frog, who you'll remember as being that kind of woods witch seer who gives the Valonqar prophecy to Cersei. So it all comes round in a bit of a loop. Now, she arrived, this is Maggie the Frog, we have a bit of the backstory to this. She arrived in Lannisport and made her name. The way they kind of portrayed her on the TV show did seem to imply that she was some kind of weirdo loner out in a hut somewhere. That's not the case. She had expensive kind of herbs and things like that. She was quite rich. She'd married a rich merchant, and she was well known, quite a well-known business person. She was famous for love potions. That was the thing that she was most famous for. Now, she then gets her son married into the lesser nobility, and then Sybel Spicer gets married into the Westlings, which is an old house, not a hugely important one, but this is a step up. So this is a family on the rise. They're looking to be getting more power for themselves. And the implication is that Maggie the Frog taught her granddaughter a few of the rudiments of the trade to do with love potions. That, after all, is a good way if you're trying to get a marriage between you and a lord who is above your social status. A love potion would be a good way of doing this. So that's the kind of link. But then we get this link made a few other times. We get Kevin Lannister remembers her when thinking about Sybel Spicer. Jamie Lannister does. He remembers, oh yeah, and she had that grandmother who was like, she really good at doing love potions. So the George R. R. Martin makes the connection for us a couple of different times. We know that Tywin was trying to win the war. Tyrion interrupts him one day when he's writing letters. He's trying to win the war through diplomacy rather than on the battlefield. So he was doing all of those things. Then we get the fact that characters who know Rob well think they kind of understand that he did it, but they still think this is a bit out of character. So they don't go the extra leap to say there's some magic going on here, but they do think it's a little bit odd. Then, after everything has happened, after the Red Wedding has happened, because of course the marriage, Rob's marriage to Jane Westerling, it gave the phrase had a grievance then, and this pushed the Red Wedding along. So after all of that has happened, Jane Westerling and her mother are captured. They were in River Run. Jamie takes River Run. He asks to see them. He double checks that she's not pregnant, because that would be an issue, because that would then mean that Rob Stark had an heir. So he talks to her for a bit, and then he sort of says to her, "Are you pregnant?" And then her mother says, "No, she's not. She's definitely not pregnant." And it turns out Jane Westerling gets taken away, but it turns out Sybil Spicer, her mother, is there saying, Tywin was very clear on that. I've made sure that did not happen. So immediately you should be going, okay, so she has been in correspondence with Tywin Lannister, and Tywin Lannister was saying to her, we need to make sure that Robb Stark doesn't have a child. Then Jamie, who clearly knows a bit about what's going on, if not all of the details, basically says, so what was the deal you did with my dad then? What do we owe you for this? As I say, Jamie comes across as very clever. He doesn't know the details of this. He clearly wasn't informed of the details of this, but he understands at some level what's been going on. And Sybil Spicer tells him. And what Tywin Lannister agreed to was a pardon for House Westerling. Okay. A brother to be made Lord of Castamere. Now, you may remember the reigns of Castamere. That castle had been empty since then, and that was one of the richest lands in all of the Westerlands. So they were sitting on a literal gold mine before Tywin Lannister had it all drowned out. She has negotiated for her brother to get a gold mine and one of the best castles and most influential areas within the Westerlands. That's a high price. She's also managed to negotiate for her daughters to be married to lords, other lords. So they're now marrying in to even more influential families, and for her son to be marrying a Lannister. So this is a very high price. And what would Tywin Lannister have paid that very high price for? Not just, can you try and make sure that Robb Stark doesn't have a baby? Or Robb Stark's wife doesn't have a baby. It would be, we need Robb Stark to get married, to break the contract with House Frey, and we need to make sure that nobody finds out about why that happened, and that also he doesn't have any children, so that I can then move on to talk to Roose Bolton and Walder Frey about the other stuff. So, yes, this was flagged. Do not feel bad about it. This is the kind of thing that George R. Martin does a lot, and it's the kind of the blink and you miss it. Oh, okay, so that was there. You probably wouldn't have seen the kind of the build up, the oh yeah, the link across to Maggie the Frog, because that's not immediately apparent what that might mean. But then Jamie does basically say it. It's never spelled out, but in that scene, we see what's happening. Let's go to a question from Craig. What do you think happens with Robb's crown going forward? Also, will his body and bones be recovered and placed in the crypt? I think I've answered the bones bit, but let's talk about his crown. So he had a crown made for him, which was reminiscent of the old crown of the Kings of Winter. And he was wearing that. He took that to the twins and then obviously was killed. So after that, the Freys had it. Now, it was Raymond Frey who had this, who was at one point the heir. We go through quite a few different heirs within the Freys. He ends up, he's one of the people outside Riverrun besieging it. If you remember, Jaime arrives there. The Freys are doing a terrible job of besieging Riverrun. And part of the reason why is that Ryman's not really paying that much of attention. He has himself a woman who I think went by the name of the Queen of Whores. And he let her play with this crown. She was wearing it. When Jaime bursts his way into the tent, she was wearing this crown. So we know where it is at that moment in time. And Jaime basically says, right, get out. I'm dealing with this siege now. I'm in charge. You go. You're not being helpful. Leave the crown, though. Raymond Frey goes, but he seems to take the crown with him, so he ignores that bit. While he's heading back, presumably to the twins, he and his companions get attacked by the Brotherhood without banners, and the crown is taken by Lady Stoneheart. So this is now Lady Stoneheart now has Robb, her son's crown. And we see this when we get the Brienne chapter, when Brienne has been captured. She's holding on to this crown. So what happens now? So it's a good question because it makes for a nice prop, but it implies a few other things, I think. One of the last acts that Cat did before the Red Wedding was to have, call it a discussion. It was really an argument with Robb about his will. And Robb, we'll talk about his will in a bit more detail a bit later, but the issue was he didn't have any children. He had to accept the fact that at that moment in time, he was at war and he could be killed. With the best will in the world, he was a good fighter, he was protected, but he had a bad injury in a battle not that long ago. And he just got the news that Bran and Rickon were dead. So it was pretty clear before then, if Robb didn't have any children and he died, then Bran would inherit. And after Bran, then Rickon. But now that was out of the equation. So if he wanted the kingdom to hold afterwards and not kind of split up, then he had to name an heir. Now, the issue was that you could then say Sansa would be the next in line, but Sansa was married to Tyrion, the enemy, the Lannisters. We can't allow this. So Sansa's not in. Well, that leaves Arya. Arya is gone, disappeared. At this moment in time, nobody knows where Arya is. Now, Robb says there's nothing else for it. I'm gonna name Jon. I'll legitimize him. I will say he's my heir, and until I have children. And Cat is angry about this. She's got her own issues about Jon. We understand the history, but first of all, she says, "What about Arya? Arya should be next in line." And Robb says, "Let's face it, she's probably dead. I can't name her my heir. Who knows where she is? And there's a fair chance that she'll never appear." And Cat says, "No, I'm sure. I would know if she was dead. I'm sure she's still alive." And then Robb says, "No. Then Cat goes, "Okay, well, I think you've got these like third cousins twice removed, somewhere in the Vale, and she tries to come up, and Robb's insistent. He says, no, it's going to be John. So the will is there that John is going to be legitimized. Kat is not happy about this, though, because she is thinking to herself that her daughter is still alive. Oh, yeah. And this will out there has basically said Jon Snow, the bastard son of her husband, is now the king, head of her daughter, the true-born daughter. So, old Cat might have sucked this up. Who knows? Lady Stoneheart, no. Lady Stoneheart now has this crown. And what do we know that she is doing? What is she prioritizing right now? Yes, killing Freys and Lannisters, but trying to find Arya and Sansa. So, she's got the crown. She believes that Arya is next in line. If Arya arrives in the Riverlands, what is Lady Stoneheart going to do? Give her the crown. There's a long sort of in fact, I will just say I've just finished writing a video on something we've talked about it briefly in the past. A few people have asked, is there a chance that Arya kills Lady Stoneheart in a mercy killing? There's a lot of kind of hints that maybe that might happen. But I think another element to this is that probably Lady Stoneheart will want Arya to take the crown. So what's going to happen with the crown? I think that's it. Which adds to this idea of a Stark succession crisis, which I will say again, I say every single time, I don't think the Stark children themselves will be arguing and fighting over who's going to be in charge of Winterfell. I don't think that's the way this is going to go. But they each will have supporters who will be. And this is going to create an issue because Jon is going to have some supporters because he's got this will. At some point, it will get to him that says, you've been legitimized, you're now the king and the Lord of Winterfell. And then Bran is going to turn up at some point, presumably, and it's going to be, oh, right, that will only happen because we thought you were dead, therefore, and you were the heir beforehand, so probably it should be you. But before that happens, we know that Wyman Manderley is trying to bring Rickon back because he thinks he knows where Rickon is. And if he brings Rickon back, that's because he wants that figurehead Stark to be in place in Winterfell. And then we've also got Sansa, who Littlefinger, if you remember his last line to her that we have in the books, is that he is offering her Winterfell. He thinks he's going to reveal her as a Stark. He's going to get the Knights of the Vale rallying behind her, and then they're going to head north and claim Winterfell. This is the last bit of this equation where we get the other Stark child who doesn't want this either. She doesn't want to be Lady of Winterfell, but she's been given the crown. So there will be some people who go, Arya has been crowned. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a really intriguing little subplot. But regardless of how much of that you buy into, I think it's pretty clear Lady Stoneheart is not just keeping hold of this crown because she just likes having it around. She's keeping hold of this because the crown symbolizes who is the ruler, who is Robb's heir, and she wants to decide who that is. Raven's Oath saying, I believe Sybil is lying, and that's Elena. You think so? Sybil Spice is lying. I'm not sure what you think she's lying about in terms of who the daughter is. Okay. I think this is if I'm interpreting you correctly, this is a theory that has been going around for a little while, that the woman who is presented to Jaime Lannister as Jane Westerling is actually not Jane Westerling. This is Sybil Spicer, who is protecting her child. Maybe Jane Westerling has already escaped, maybe with the Blackfish, and she's out there on the run. And Sybil Spicer has actually presented the wrong daughter to Jaime. I did look into this a while ago, and I kind of concluded that this is Jane Westerling, partly because Jaime was quite convinced by the acting performance, if it were an acting performance. Partly because would be an incredibly dangerous game for Sybil Spicer. That we've got literally zero indication that she actually secretly thought Robb was a good husband for her girl, and actually she was secretly on his side. Grey Wind, who is probably the best judge of character, doesn't like the Westerlings. All the way through, he's having to be held back from the Westerlings who are around. So all the indications are that the Westerlings were about to reveal their true colours. A lot of the argument, I think, comes from the fact that there was a George R. R. Martin is human moment when he got his description slightly changed on Jane Westerling. When Kat initially sees her, and I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like she noticed her wide childbearing hips or something along those lines. And then Jaime sees this slender woman in front of him. Now, George R. R. Martin has said, "Oh yeah, hands up, that was just a mistake." So I think there's for me, there's nothing to suggest it. Everything to suggest that this is exactly what was happening. The foreshadowing was given there that this was going to be happening. The Grey Wind was hinting that something like this was going to happen, and there's nothing to suggest that Sybil Spicer is secretly on the side of the Starks. I can understand why people think that, but for me, it's not a thing that I've really bought into. The hips don't lie. If George R. R. Martin would clearly beg to differ. Right, so let's go to Carl Karstark's talking to people about the tickets for the stage play. We will talk about the stage play properly. Fergie was asking if I've got any tickets. Yes, I have. I'm very pleased to say. Let me know in the chat. I would be fascinated to know how many people have got tickets. I'm very aware of the fact that I'm incredibly lucky to be able to get to this, and many people in different parts of the world will find it incredibly hard to get here. So this is not me bragging at all. I'm delighted I've got tickets, but I would love to know who else has got tickets. Has got them. VKM Spooge has Rickard Tabor tickets to the Game of Thrones stage play, which is going to be happening in 2 or 3 months' time. Mando Atreides, I said I'm not going to talk about this now. I'm going to get distracted. Mando Atreides, will there be live horses in the play? I think they have restructured. I knew I was going to get distracted onto this. They have restructured the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. If you look at the plans, I know the theatre actually. I've been there quite a few times. It is a big theatre, but they've stripped out a few of the seats to make a kind of a big cross-shaped stage, which is going to be seen, as far as I can tell, almost in the round. They've added in a few more seats on the kind of the far side. And if you imagine like a cross-shaped stage, you've got in each of the different quadrants, there are seats as well as the seats in the sort of the galleries looking down. So almost certainly this means we're going to get jousting. Now, if you look at the list of creatives that they've got signed up to this, top of the list, after they've listed the writer and director, are the I don't think I'm exaggerating to say probably the world's greatest theatrical puppetry team. Now, if you've not been to a theatre, modern theatre, to see the kind of puppetry they can do these days, it's astonishing. It's not like just like little puppets like that. This is life-size and bigger puppetry that looks real. The award-winning, they did the Life of Pi stage play. I didn't see that, but they were the team that behind that, and it did look fantastic. So I think that's what's going to be happening. Lady Pushkin's yes. Zachary Chronic saying yes. Mitra, yes. Plastic Kraken Addict saying I'm going on my birthday. Ooh, happy birthday to you for that. And yep, Karstark, not jealous. Okay, yes, yeah. As I say, I appreciate hugely the how privileged I am to be able to get to it. What's the UK equivalent of a Tony? We have the Olivier Awards and the Evening Standard Awards. So yes, they won. The puppetry people won that. Simon Murphy's going. Carl Karstark saying, I hope the TV cast folks get to see the play too. I'd love to see the reactions to their parents and what started all this hoopla. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I quite like the idea of I assume George is going to be there. But yeah, if they have some of the actors from the show, I think that'd be fantastic. I mean, great if Sean Bean comes along to see Young himself. That would be not too bad, would it? Randy Mitra, would I agree that the number of tickets is less than usual? The stalls look reduced in capacity. Yes, it is. They've said as much. It's definitely fewer seats. Alex Hop saying I'm going on my birthday too. Yeah, excellent. So yeah, quite a few people are. So that's the yeah. There's a lot. I mean, it is a reduced capacity theatre. I don't know what the exact capacity is. I'm going to say probably about 1,000 normally, and we're talking. I don't know exactly how many weeks run it is, but I think probably 8 weeks or something like that. So a fair few people will get to see this, and as I say, we're keeping our fingers crossed. They are going to be filming it. They film everything. That doesn't give a guarantee of anything at all. They film everything that is done there for posterity, but it does leave open the hope that this might be available soon to a wider audience. Okay, I promise I will come back to the stage play. I've got a couple of questions about it later. Renabin Mitra saying, salutations, Robert and Dan the dog. Good intro. Mad King is coming. Lord Went is hosting. Carrick is winning, and Chiltern Railways will be earning a lot this summer. Absolutely. Joe Magician and others have speculated the concept of Rob Stark 2.0, Wolf Head Man Resurrected. And I have previously asked if the Wolf Head Resurrected Man was an abandoned plotline via that Danny vision in the House of the Undying. But what do you think of the literary decision of bringing Rob Stark back? Does it work? Assuming that George R. R. Martin can expertly write up his resurrection, do you see a purpose for a resurrected Rob Stark? Surprisingly, I actually see a purpose here. If Lady Stoneheart's plotline after the Red Wedding 2.0 gets transferred to a resurrected Rob Stark, suddenly we can connect the Riverlands to the Neck and the North to the Wall. Bloodraven's vision for John has him chopping off Rob's head on top of the wall. The Stark conspiracy, the will Howland read, and the group sent north. What do you think? The setup is not there yet, but this is the direction George R. R. Martin can go if he wants to. Primarily because we don't know where Rob Stark's body is, and Joe Magician narrowed it down to Riverrun or the twins. Well, I haven't seen that video from Joe. I'll say what I say every time about Joe Magician's videos, and I say it to his face when he's on these streams as well. I have huge amounts of time and respect for the man and all the work he puts into them. Sometimes I think he hits absolute gold with his videos and theories. Sometimes I would beg to disagree. I hugely appreciate the fact that they make you think about this story in slightly different ways. So that said, I've not seen that video, so I don't know all the evidence he's managed to dig up on it. I've already said I can see a reason why Rob's death, or a plot reason why Rob's death matters. We've got the who's the heir plot line. Would it add something if Rob came back? Well, it would. Personally, though, I think each person coming back from the dead it slightly devalues it, if that makes sense. John, we assume, coming back from the dead will have an impact. And George R. R. Martin has said that what happened with Beric Dondarrion, and therefore by implication across to Lady Stoneheart, is sort of foreshadowing for that. So we've got that happening already. Having yet more people coming back from the dead doesn't really, for me, add much to this. In fact, it diminishes the impact of John coming back, which should be where all of this is kind of leading up to. I think there's a lot of plot practicalities which are not insurmountable. George R. R. Martin is an excellent writer. He can get around these things if he wants to, and he does have a love of horror, and this would all be rather horrific. Let's put it that way. But firstly, who brings him back? We seem to need a red priest in order to do this. I don't think we're going to find Thoros of Myr doing this. Melisandre is not there, and Beric expended his life force to be bringing back Lady Stoneheart. Is Lady Stoneheart going to be expending her life force to be bringing back Robb? Possibly, but as you've pointed out, we don't know where the body is. Which kind of brings me to the second point, time. Whatever's happened to Robb Stark's body, I think we can be reasonably certain that the Freys have not honoured it. They've not carefully preserved it in some way, made sure that it doesn't decompose. The Red Wedding to where we are now-ish in the plot to, say, the Pink Letter is... The Red Wedding happened in December of the year 299 AC. The Pink Letter is about August of the next year. So we're talking 8 months of a body which has not been cared for. Whichever way you look at this, the Freys have not looked after this body. Reanimating that and bringing it back. Lady Stoneheart seems to have lost huge amounts of who she was because of the delay bringing her back. It was a few days. This would be a reanimated Robb that is barely recognizable, and as a character is barely the same. So I think this would be incredibly different. It's not, as you say, it's not beyond George R. R. Martin's ability to write. but I can't see the value it would add to the story. I think it would probably detract from some elements of the story, and I think there's a few practicalities there that kind of get in the way. Question from Curse Ballerina saying, or picking up something for Ramon Cavalcante. Thank you very much. I love it when people do this, picking up questions for other people. I hugely appreciate it. Have you heard the theory that Rob walked cat while dying, comparing the gesture of tearing one's own face with one's fingernails to the woman Varamir Sixskins tries to walk in? I've not heard that theory. No, I have to say I was just trying to work through it in my mind. So, Varamir Sixskins, if you remember from his prologue chapter, when he died or was dying, he tried to skin change into I've forgotten her name now. A younger woman who was near there, and she pushed him out. Basically, she stopped. It takes a huge amount of strength to be. It would, according to Varamir, to sort of go into a human's mind and kind of push them to one side. She was having none of this. Now, as an aside, this kind of tells you, A, yeah, Bran's very powerful, and B, also that Hodor's mind has been damaged, which we obviously already know, by what happened in his future/past. But this Varamir could not. He blamed the fact that he was quite weak. He was going to die. But yes, we get that thistle. Is it maybe? I can't remember. That's going to bug me until I remember. Yes. So she basically she's almost biting off her tongue, scratching her face. Lady Stoneheart or Cat does. She kind of rips fingers down her face. But before she's killed. Is that a sign that Rob skin changed into her? No, I think is the answer. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's some evidence I'm missing. I think there's a few things. Firstly, we see this from Kat's perspective. I think we would have got a hint of that if that were the case. Secondly, where is Rob going to be skin changing into at that moment? Instinctively into Grey Wind, not his mother. And then, I mean, I think thirdly, is that why would he, even if he's thinking logically, why would he go to somebody who is almost certainly going to be killed any second as well? So I've not read the theory. Maybe there's more evidence than I know. But yeah, I don't think it sounds likely. Let's go to Catherine Fursith, saying, "Hi, Robert. The closeness we feel for Rob is combined with a very real lack of true insight into his thoughts because of the lack of POV chapters. He feels both close to us and somewhat of a mystery at the same time. His upbringing and sense of duty seem to define him and his values. However, we see him struggle with issues such as identity and duty, honor and love, as well as how to be the lord his father was. He clearly tries to mold himself on Ned, but what duty actually requires seems to confuse him. Marrying Jane Westerling isn't about love versus duty, but rather a struggle of duty versus duty, which makes it all the more sad. Likewise, he's a young boy trying to figure out the right things to do. Having all this responsibility at too young an age, would you consider? What do you consider the main themes of Rob's story to be?" So I think I would agree with a lot of that analysis you've got going on there. His life as a whole is a tragedy. It's one of those things where everybody acts in the way that you think they probably would act given the circumstances, and the inevitable result of that is what happens. It's a proper tragedy. But fundamentally, this is a sort of a coming of age theme for him. It's about innocence and leadership. I've got a linked question to this a bit later, so I will pick up on this a bit more. I've got a quote here which I took up because it's something which is sort of related to this, but also it's a bit of writing from George R. R. Martin that we don't often look at, but it shows us a bit about Robb, and we see it from Bran's perspective, and this is from quite early on. He's still in Winterfell, but his parents have both gone, and Bran is quite affected by this, and Robb kind of sneaks into his room. It's after dark, and he's just trying to comfort him. And we read this: "Are they ever coming back?" Bran asked him. "Yes," Robb said, with such hope in his voice that Bran knew he was hearing his brother and not just Robb the Lord. "Mother will be home soon. Maybe we can ride out to meet her when she comes. Wouldn't that surprise her to see you a horse?" Even in the dark room, Bran could feel his brother's smile. "And afterward, we'll ride north to see the wall. We won't even tell Jon we're coming. We'll just be there one day, you and me. It will be an adventure." "An adventure," Bran repeated wistfully. He heard his brother sob. The room was so dark he could not see the tears on Robb's face. So he reached out and found his hand, their fingers twined together. And I just find that incredibly sad, because this is Robb who he's trying to hold it all together. Both his parents have gone. He's facing almost certain war. He pretty much knows this already, and he really cares about Bran, his brother, and he just tries to reassure him. He tries to say, "Yeah, of course, Mother's coming back. We'll ride out to meet her. Oh, you can now ride the horse. This is great. And we'll go and see Jon, and we've been missing him. That'll be go up there." And Bran makes the distinction between his brother and Robb the Lord, because in this chapter he's been watching Robb, and he's been thinking, that's not the Robb I know. That's Robb who's having to be the Lord. He's having to put on this. It's like put on the armor of being a Lord and be strong and be brave and be decisive. And he can tell, even at that young age, he can tell that inside there's something else going on. And Robb is giving him all this encouragement, but Bran sees he's crying. And I just find that an incredibly touching moment, that Robb is able to be open like that in front of Bran, while still trying to do the thing that the encouraging thing, the big brother thing. So yeah, this is about innocence and coming of age, and somebody who is having to take on responsibility that they may be good at, and he does show flashes of being actually really quite good at that. But is he emotionally ready? It's less certain. Okay, let's go to Andrew K saying Robb took on a lot. Rickon clung to him massively in that time as well. A teenager thrust into so much and dealt with levels of trauma and loss. Yeah, completely. And their father died. Rickon didn't understand. Bran could nearly understand. Rickon couldn't. He was far too young. Ginty M saying, "Hello, Robert. I hope you're doing well." I am. My question is inspired by Robb's death and is more about the Winterfell crypts. The fandom collectively accepts that in death, the Stark spirits are summoned to the Winterfell crypts, but also the Stark wargs experience a second life if they are survived by their direwolf. So when Robb died, he was drawn to Grey Wind, and only after they were both dead did he return to the Winterfell crypts. My question is, Could this explain why Stark kings and lords are always depicted with direwolves at their sides, as a means separating the Stark from the direwolf in the crypts? I found this a fascinating question, so thank you. I've sort of spoken on the first half of that bit already. I think that my instinctive feel is that the magic which calls the Stark Lord, the Stark King, to Winterfell outweighs the bond um, uh, to a bonded animal, but that's just an instinct. Um, because we don't know, because we have no evidence of what happens with Robb's spirit. But this idea that Starks might have direwolves, and so in order for when they get to the Winterfell crypts, if we're saying, as I think we do, that the spirit goes and is sort of bound within the statue. Again, the kind of the legends coming down from this, they place the sword across the statue to kind of bind the spirit in there. The idea that you have a wolf, because most of the statues, it's not clear whether it's all of them, but most of them seem to have a direwolf kind of wrapped around their legs. If that's to kind of like separate out the direwolf spirit, I kind of like that idea. It's probably worth pointing out, recently at least, the Starks and direwolves. Yes, it's their sigil. Yes, they're connected to them, but direwolves weren't around when that direwolf appears. The dead direwolf with all the pups in chapter 1. Then it's just, I think it's Theon actually who says there hasn't been a direwolf south of the wall for 200 years, and that seems about right. So certainly for the last good few generations of Starks, there haven't been direwolves there, and we're not told previously of other Starks having them. So, for example, Torrhen Stark. We don't know huge amounts about Torrhen Stark, but he certainly didn't seem to turn up with a direwolf at his side. So maybe the Starks in hundreds, thousands of years ago did normally have direwolves, but certainly not the last few generations. The That, though, does not, I think, take away from the fact that this could still be the case, because the building of the statues is now a thing that is tradition. Each Stark has its statue, and then there's a direwolf put with it because the direwolf is the sigil. That can just carry on even if people have forgotten exactly why. The Starks seem to have forgotten why they're all buried under there. It's just the tradition. This is just what Starks do. So yeah, I like it as an idea. I don't think we've got the evidence to say one way or another, but it's a nice idea. Let's go to Maura Lee saying, "Hi, Robert. Hi, Maura. If Robb had married a Frey daughter instead of the woman he did marry, would he and his mother have been killed? Would there have been a red wedding, or was it always his and his mother's destiny to have been killed in any way?" I've always been curious as to the choices Robb could have made so that he could have the chance to live out his life to ripe old age as Warden of the North instead of being killed with the Red Wedding. What do you think? I like the idea that Robb Stark could have found a way to live a happy life. I do kind of stick, however, to this idea that his life is a tragedy in the purest sense, which is that once events have been set in place, I don't think there was any other way around this. Now, yes, we can certainly see if he hadn't gone to the crag, if he hadn't got injured, then Sybil Spicer might not have done the love potion. The Jane Westerling marriage might not have happened. In that case, what would have happened? Well, eventually, Robb would have had to turn his army back and head back into the Riverlands, because they would have got news somehow that Tywin Lannister and the Tyrells had joined forces and they'd taken King's Landing, and his ruse to be trying to get Tywin Lannister's army out to the Westerlands, that had failed. So he was never going to capture Casterly Rock. Casterly Rock, George R. R. Martin has confirmed, is the strongest castle in all of Westeros. So he was never going to capture that. All he was ever going to do was annoy the Lannisters and cause some damage. And as I said, every single battle he was in, he would lose a few more troops. Eventually, he would have to head back. Also, with winter coming, with him no longer having Jaime Lannister as a hostage, with him no longer having the other Lannisters as hostages, with Arya disappeared, with Sansa soon to be disappeared as well, married off to a Lannister. There was no prisoner swap in offer. What was he actually now attempting to achieve down south? He couldn't get his father back. He couldn't get Arya back. He wouldn't be able to get Sansa back. What from that point on, what actually is the point of doing all of the fighting? If winter's coming, maybe he should just find himself a place to sort of hole up. Maybe he could get to Moat Cailin, retake Moat Cailin, fortify that, stay there for the winter. And then, let's not forget, he's heard Winterfell's gone. He was going to have to head back up to Winterfell and try and reclaim that. So, en route, he would have had to go to the twins anyway, and he would then have had to marry. That's the point at which he would have to marry a Frey. Now, would this change anything? Probably not. I tend to the view that Walder Frey would have turned regardless. Walder Frey, it's easily missed. I did do a video on this, but there was an Aziz one that was we did together. It's easily missed looking in the Frey family tree, but they try and suck up to people. Two families in particular, the Targaryens and then the Lannisters. Why? Because the Targaryens were the most powerful family in the land, so they named some children after Targaryens. And then after the Targaryens were gone, they switched their attention and started naming their children after Lannisters. And they'd already got a marriage between a Frey and a Lannister. So the loyalties were never 100% strong and clear. I think that Walder Frey always would have done it. If he was willing to break guest right for Edmure's marriage, he was willing to break guest right for Robb Stark's marriage. It doesn't matter which marriage it was. I think personally it was always going to happen that way. The only difference, I think, is with Roose Bolton. Roose Bolton was also, Tywin was corresponding with him, and he managed to talk him around. And we see there's a fantastic Arya chapter where he basically makes up his mind to turn his back on the Starks and throw his lot in with Tywin Lannister. That seems to be on a knife edge for him. He thinks about this. Roose is a very cautious man. He thinks about this a lot. We don't know, because we're not inside his head either, what it was that kind of pushed him over the edge. But one of the elements definitely was when Robb married Jane Westerling. That kind of made him go, okay, so he's now going to lose the Freys. So that's the only thing that gives me real pause. But I kind of tend to the view that the Freys are so money grabbing, or not all of the Freys, but certainly Walder Frey, money grabbing and trying to get as much power as possible. that Tywin could have won them around regardless. Joy Das over on Facebook. Hi, great to see you. Saying the wife of Robb Stark was a spy sent by Tywin Lannister. Is that true? I did talk about this a little bit earlier, but the headline I think here is that she was not the spy. She seems to have genuinely fallen for Robb Stark, but her mother used love potions to get those two to marry, and that meant that Walder Frey could then be horrified that Robb Stark had broken the marriage pact, and one thing led to another, led to the Red Wedding. Let's go to Flame G saying, "Hello, Robert. I hope you and Dan are doing well." We are, thank you. My question is, why does Robb execute Lord Rickard Karstark instead of sending him to the wall? And if he had sent Lord Rickard to the wall, do you think that the Karstarks would have stayed by his side instead of turning their allegiance against him? Yeah, it's an interesting one. So the background here is that after Catelyn, and this is a chain of events here, after Catelyn learns about what's happened to her children, Bran and Rickon, she decides that the imperative is to get her other children back, being Sansa and Arya. And so in order to do that, she releases Jaime to go down and basically prisoner swap, bargain with them. Lord Karstark, Rickard Karstark, is then furious about this because Jaime Lannister killed his sons. And so he then, first of all, he sends his people out to try and find Jaime Lannister. But then secondly, he and his men go and kill the other Lannister prisoners that they've got, just taking it out on some of the Lannisters. And Robb comes back and he's just like, God, what on earth has happened while I've been gone? Now, he thinks he has to show that he's a strong leader at this point. He's mucked up. He knows he has, just in terms of the politics, not necessarily everything else. But by marrying Jane Westerling, he has impacted on one of the key alliances they had with the Freys. He's shown, he can't even control his own mother, is the way that a lot of people were looking at that. She's going off and doing things. Edmure has ruined the plan he had. Again, I don't think it's Edmure's fault because Robb didn't tell him what the plan was, so he didn't know what he was and wasn't really supposed to be doing. And now, is he supposed to stand by and let Rickard Karstark just kill his own soldiers, releasing them as his own prisoners, releasing them as one thing, killing them? That's very different. Now, could Robb have shown that he's a gracious and wise ruler by saying, "I hereby forgive you, you can go to the wall"? I guess he could. But he didn't think that was really an option. Now, he didn't really think that was an option for a number of reasons. I mean, the thing which, the kind of the line which he kind of says that seems to convince himself, he seems to convince himself with it, is he killed my honor. He didn't just kill those Lannisters, he killed my honor. And what does Robb mean by that? It means that these were his prisoners. And what he's now shown is that, or what Rickard Karstark has shown, is that prisoners are no longer safe under Robb Stark. Robb Stark may not have personally killed those prisoners himself, but his men did. And so he can't control them. And that means that any possibility of prisoner swaps in the future, you can forget it. Rickard Karstark did huge amounts of damage to Robb's reputation But also then, Rickard Karstark showed no contrition. Robb comes back and basically says, you shouldn't have done that. That was wrong and bad. And Rickard Karstark doesn't care. He just keeps on shouting at Robb. And he basically threatens him and he says, go on, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to kill me? He starts hurling abuse at him. I mean, his last line was, kill and be cursed, you are no king of mine. Which seems to imply that he doesn't think that the Robb has the authority. If he's saying you're not my king, Robb doesn't have the authority even to send him to the wall. So would he even respect that? It's not 100% clear. There are practicalities. How would you get this person to the wall, given the fact that Moat Coleen, the North has fallen? Basically, Moat Coelen's gone. How are they even going to get there? So there are practical reasons. But fundamentally, Robb thought, I have to prove that I'm a strong leader. This guy is pushing me into it. He's wanting to be killed. He doesn't want to be sent to the wall. So could Robb have done it? I guess so, but he didn't think he had any choice. The interesting thing, though, is you say, would this change how the Karstarks would have reacted as a whole? The Karstarks were divided. When Alice Karstark appears in the story, she basically her uncle, but because of what's happened and Rickard's now dead, her uncle tries to stage a coup, marrying Alice Karstark, who is about Robb's age, and she escapes and she heads up to the wall and basically takes sanctuary with Jon Snow. And Jon's goes to talk to her, and he's thinking to himself, this might be a bit awkward, because my sort of brother, at least that's how he viewed Robb. He killed Lord Karstark, but Alice is like, yeah, he could get a bit angry sometimes. We kind of understand. He kind of put that on himself. He shouldn't have killed those prisoners. Yeah, some of us are annoyed, but I understand. And that seems to be half of the Karstarks seem to be in that camp. So this wasn't just you killed our lord, everybody's going to hate on the Starks forever. Some of the Karstarks are, yeah, understanding. And it's also worth pointing out that the Karstarks see themselves. This is something Rickard Karstark was throwing at Robb, was that they see themselves as part of the extended Stark family. He accuses Robb of saying, if you're going to kill me, you will be a kinslayer. You're killing your own family doing this. So there's a there's a kind of a depth there that some of the Karstarks are viewing the Starks not just as like their overlords up there somewhere, but they're actually part of the wider family, and they recognise that Rickard had a bit of a temper on him. Question: did I get another? Roman Likovets, was there ever an actual chance for Robb to ally with Renly, or was him being king in the north a complete deal breaker for any Southron alliance? Well, Robb sends Cat down there to try and negotiate, and they don't really get a chance to do a proper negotiation. They arrive just as Renly and Stannis are about to have, or she arrives just as Renly and Stannis are about to have a big battle, and then they're there for the shadow baby moment, at which point the cat has to make a quick escape with Brienne. So we don't get a chance for any kind of detailed negotiation. Renly's mind doesn't really seem to be in that. Stannis, no, it's bend the knee. Uh, there are no friends. There's a, you're either an enemy or you bend the knee. So Renly was a better chance, but as long as Renly thought that he had a chance of winning the Seven Kingdoms, he wasn't going to just immediately bargain away two of them. So could they have done it? I think what could have happened is, theoretically, if we hadn't had the whole Melisandre thing going on, is that if Renly had managed to subdue Stannis in some way, then perhaps Renly and Robb via Cat could have come to some kind of arrangement that they would deal with the Lannisters first, and then discuss it afterwards, because that was the presenting issue. Renly, I suspect he would have just gone with whatever's easiest and had a fun. He wanted to enjoy life as much as anything else. So was there an actual chance? Not much, but they could probably have got better than did happen. Let's go to a question from, where did I get up to? James Perkins. Greetings, Robert. No specific question from me today, just this. What is something you're curious about or interested in with regards to Robb's story? He's one of the characters we know the most about without ever having got a POV chapter, which leaves us in a weird limbo. Yeah, so I think the thing, I suspect many people will say this, the thing which I would love to know that we don't ever really get a chance to is the link with Grey Wind. All of the Stark children have this skin-changing ability and have a bond with their direwolf. But Arya and Nymeria separated quite early, so that is a unique bond that they've got. Lady was killed quite early. We don't get a POV for Rickon and Shaggy Dog, so that feels like a thing we don't know huge amounts about. Jon still has this kind of shame. He experiences it, and he is clearly close with Ghost, but something in him just doesn't ever fully embrace it. Bran doesn't get proper training until he gets up to Bloodraven's cave. So we're kind of left with a bit of, and is still a child. So we're kind of left with this kind of gap in somebody who seems to be embracing it and somebody who appears to have quite a strong bond, and is using it, because there's several occasions, not just in fighting, but there's several occasions when Robb seems to be using this bond to his advantage. One of the which is picking a way through the mountains to get into the Westlands. Grey Wind found a goat track, apparently, and then Robb took the army that way. You get that moment really on when you get Robb, who is being, I wouldn't say quite bullied by his commanders, including Lord Umber, but they're certainly pushing to see whether he's going to be a strong enough leader. And that's the point at which Grey Wind jumps up on the table and bites the fingers off of the Great John. So there's been a few times when Grey Wind is so in tune with Robb, it makes people start to think it's more than just a pet. There's actually some kind of skin changing one there. So I'd love to actually see that in action. How is that actually working? Right, let's go to a question from Caleb Weers. Hello, Robert. There's been something I've been curious about for some time. Had the War of the Five Kings never happened, who would Robb have married? I don't think this is ever mentioned, but Marjorie Tyrell is the only bachelorette from the major houses. Is there another person who would make a good match? Um, it's an interesting question. Yes, we've got Marjorie, um, and she always will have been um, the most eligible in probably in that sort of elite Lords Paramount family group. But who would Robb marry? And ultimately, it's it would have been down if none of this had happened, if they'd lived their happy best lives in Winterfell, it would have been down to Ned probably and Cat to be deciding who's the most appropriate person for um, Robb to be marrying. And I kind of get the feeling that Ned would have wanted a northern family. Ned, after what happened in Robert's Rebellion, he retreated up to Winterfell, and other than when he absolutely had to, he did not leave the north again. He was very happy to leave all of the stuff down south well away, and he was just going to focus on what happens in the north. So it's noticeable that he never seems to be thinking about, oh, what happened to him? Can I get a fostering opportunity for Robb? Robb was exactly the right age. In fact, he was probably a bit older. The age at which you might put your son somewhere for a bit of fostering. Ned doesn't do that. He keeps his family tight in with him. And so it makes me wonder whether Ned would have just gone with a northern family. We do get, again, when Alice Karstark comes and talks to Jon, they have quite a nice little chat, actually, sort of catching up. They sort of vaguely knew each other. They had met before a long time ago when Alice had come to Winterfell. Her father had brought her to Winterfell with the idea that she might marry Rob Stark. Now, Jon was there as well, so Jon kind of met her at that point. That didn't seem to come to anything, but it does make me think that if the Northern Lords are thinking, I'm going to pitch my daughter here, I'm going to push her towards Rob Stark and see if something happens. If they're thinking that, then I think they probably will have picked up on the idea that Ned Stark is not looking for the daughter of a noble house to the south. So, yeah, I don't think we know. I think that this would have become an issue quite soon because he was 14 coming on to 15. At that time, you'd certainly expect him to be married before he's 20. So this would have started to become an issue quite soon. But someone like Alice Karstark, I think, is very likely. Yeldenil. Hi, Robert. We see Robb mostly through Bran and Cat's eyes. If roles were reversed, how do you think Robb would think about them? And what would be the most pivotal moments in their relationship? Well, I read out that section from Bran's POV with Robb. I think that tells us a lot. He cares about Bran hugely. He worries about Bran hugely. And I think he ultimately he probably blames himself a bit for what happens to Bran because he he takes the decisive decisions. Yeah, I'll call the banners. Yes, I'll march south. Yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll do that. But he does angst over them. He has this kind of like combination of both of his parents. Actually, Cat does make clever political decisions about stuff. Ned can be decisive, but he thinks about things for a while, and he broods. So Robb seems to have that inside him. He seems to keep a lot hidden. Cat shows a lot more to the world. Ned keeps a lot more hidden within him. Robb does have that element of keeping stuff hidden within him. but the care there for Bran, I think, is quite clear. And the moment that he leaves him, I think, is probably that's the kind of the pivotal moment there, because he's not just leaving. He knows he'll be gone for a long time, and he knows that this means that Bran is going to be brought up not and not protected by his father or his mother or his older brother, and Jon's gone as well. He's taking Theon with him, so Bran is basically left there. Who's going to be bringing him up? Maester Lewin. I think Robb will feel a bit guilty about that. As for Cat, I think this is a really fascinating. We just see obviously this from her perspective. If we saw it from his perspective, I think it would be even more marked what we can see from her perspective happening. But I think he starts off, he relies on her. She's the person who is basically telling him what to do. You need to call the banners. You need to be marching. You need to be strong here. You need to. She tells him lots of things. We need to be dealing with Renly now. We need to be doing this. She's the person who's sort of nudging him onwards. That slowly shifts over time. It's not remarked upon hugely, but I think the power dynamic is shown when they get to the twins the first time. They come down, and Robb, he's leading his army. He's come up with this idea that he's going to head off, which is his idea, but they need to get across. And his mother says, "Yeah, I'll talk to Walder Frey," and she goes in there, and she agrees to stuff, negotiates, comes out, and tells Robb, "Okay, so this is the deal." Robb could have done that himself, but he trusted his mother to go in and do it, and he accepted what his mother had done. He didn't go, "Oh no," because he could have said, "No, that's not right. I'm going in now. I'm going to go in and negotiate. You clearly you didn't think about this. I'm not going to be marrying someone." He could have done any of those things. He didn't. He accepted it. But the further on into this story you get, the more Robb is standing up for himself. That conversation about his will, she's got very clear ideas, and he's very clearly saying, "No, we're doing what I want now." Uh, it all ends up ultimately with him seeing her as a liability. He trusted her. This just takes 3 books, barely. He trusts her completely to start with, and he ends up seeing her as a liability. What she did with releasing Jaime is a key part of that. But at the end, he makes the decision that he is going to send her to Seaguard and basically put her under house arrest. He says, "Okay, I need to head back up north. I need to go and capture the north now. This will be hard work. I don't want you coming with me. I don't want you doing anything else, though. Go here with, I think it was Dennis Mallister, go to Seaguard, and I've given him instructions not to let you out until the war's over." Which is massive as a shift. And so this is when I was sort of saying earlier on about this kind of coming of age story. Whether you agree with that or not, that's where he's shifted. He's grown up. He started out doing what his mother was saying. He ends up basically locking his mother in a very nice castle somewhere and saying, "Don't come out until the war's over." Agolos Lupatos saying, "I hope you're well. Do you think Robb's will resurface in the story? And if so, how do you think it will be done? Keep up the amazing work. Greetings from Greece." Well, hello to Greece. Yes, so I talked about this a little bit earlier, but his will legitimizes Jon and names him Lord and King. that will is not just the piece of paper; it is the co-signatories, the people who witnessed it, two of whom are probably still in the net with Howland Reed. Now, Howland Reed, don't forget, knows who John truly is. I think that group will be part of the group that gets John into power in some way in the north. So, when John gets revived, brought back from the dead, whatever you want to call it, there's no reason to think that he's going to do anything different from what he was going to do, which was to head down to Winterfell with an army of wildlings. And when he gets there, join up presumably with Stannis' forces in some way and retake Winterfell. Now, that may or may not coincide with what happens with the Knights of the Vale, but what this does mean is that when Winterfell is taken, you will get a group of people who will say, and now this guy is the new Lord and King. Stannis will be wanting that as well, at the same point at which probably Rickon's going to arrive. And it's going to be like, oh, well, he shouldn't be because we only said he was going to be Lord and King because this guy over here we thought was dead. So it is going to play out. For a long time, I can remember thinking, how's this going to get all the way up to the wall and things like that? I don't think it even needs to have to do that. It might arrive at the wall. It would, I think, be quite ironic if it arrives at Castle Black, if somebody brings it to Castle Black when John is dead. And then he wakes up and it's like, oh, okay, you're back. Does that invalidate this? The wording here says, until he dies. Did you die? So there's a lot of potential rules lawyering going on here, but it will at some point. John will be made aware of this, and more importantly, the people around John will. Kramer Iniarino. Robert, thank you. Oh, very generous. Thank you very much. Robert, thank you for all the great analyses. Do you think Robb would have executed Theon, assuming no Red Wedding, if he saw what Ramsay did? So, well, there's a lot of layers to this. So, let's assume Robb survives the Red Wedding, he gets all the way up to Winterfell. He finds Theon, and everybody's saying you've got to kill Theon, because he killed Bran and Rickon. Is he going to have sympathy on Theon because Ramsay Bolton did bad things to him? I think the answer is no. Because Robb's mindset is very much, I have to do the right thing. And if he thinks that Theon killed Bran and Rickon, then he would have to kill him. However, this notion that Theon killed Bran and Rickon is starting to crack. He's already admitted. In fact, if you look, one of the things that George R. Martin does to try and tell us about the identity of a person at any given moment in time is what the name of the chapter is. And Theon's last chapter is called Theon. It's not the Ghost in Winterfell or anything like that, or Reek. It's Theon. He's reclaimed his Theon identity at this point. And he's being honest in a really weird way. In this last chapter, obviously the Spearwives, Mance Rayder's Spearwives, they get him into this little plot in order to rescue fake Arya and get her out of Winterfell. Now, that whole plot works, but he's there kind of like on the verge trying to say, I didn't kill them, Bran Rickon, because they're saying, you deserve to die because of what you did to Bran and Rickon. He's starting to get to be truthful, firstly about who he is. He is not Reek, he is Theon. And he's also kind of, though, wanting to die. But if we're getting to this point where he actually can be honest, and so Robb can say, I hereby sentence you to death because you killed Bran and Rickon, and he says, well, I didn't actually. I think I still did bad things. I killed some other kids, but it wasn't them. And then if Rickon actually turns up, and then perhaps it's a really fun theory that I like. If you see what's actually happening to Theon is that he's made it to Stannis' camp and he's chained up at the moment, but the Northerners want him to be killed because of what he did. And Stannis is persuaded by Asher to take Theon to the Weirwood Tree to kill him. We know that the Weirwood Trees have been talking to him, and it's almost certainly Bran. What if he gets there? I love this idea. He gets taken out there to be killed by the Northerners in their northern way, and the Weirwood Tree starts speaking and saying he didn't do it. We've had Weirwood Trees talking to people before. Could they now be talking to lots of people? So I actually think that this is not a straightforward question. I think that he would not have sympathy on him because of what Ramsay did, but there may well be other extenuating circumstances that mean that he wouldn't do it. Okay, I think those are my questions about Robb. I've got some more questions here. And Random Demetrius saying those damn crows were asking for Theon to be killed. Kill. Yeah, they absolutely. This is part of the theory, is that if they are wanting him to be going there, is that because the Weirwood Tree is going to do something? Greet Weirwood, would Theon's blood be considered King's blood? Would he be used by Mel? I mean, yeah, it's an interesting question. So King's blood is not an exact formula. Let's start with that. Is that it's so she clearly thinks that the bastard son of a king has got King's blood. Okay. Then the thinking is that she may well think that Aemon. This is what John's thinking. She might think Aemon's got King's blood. Why is that? Well, he's the son of a king. He could have been king. I mean, he never was king, but there's kingish stuff around him. His brother was a king, so maybe she might go for him. Also, what about Mance Rayder's child? Mance Rayder was the king beyond the wall. So does that mean his child is? Well, the wildlings don't work that way. They don't think that child actually is a prince, but Melisandre doesn't seem to think. So I think the short answer is she probably would think anyone in relative proximity to kingship in some way is potentially someone with king's blood. So Theon is the son of a king. So yeah, I think that's entirely right. Question from... Okay, let's get back into the Mad King stage play. We've got a couple of questions about that. Lady Pushkin's saying, I've got my Mad King tickets booked and I'm very excited. I'm excited for you. How spoilery or revealing do you think it will be? Do you think it will be mostly what we know already? Okay, so for those who are sort of coming new-ish to this stage play, opening this summer in Stratford-upon-Avon Royal Shakespeare Theatre in central England. This was not written by George R. R. Martin, but he has been actively involved in it. And it's set during the tourney at Harrenhal, where a lot of things happened. Now, in terms of spoilery, I mean, I'm not sure I'd use the word. I think in the sense in which I suspect you're using it, yes, I think this will be spoilery. I wouldn't use the word spoilery myself. I think we will learn a lot of stuff, is the way I would put it. I think it is impossible for us not to learn a lot of stuff. What we don't have yet is from George R. R. Martin, and if anyone gets an interview with him, I hope they ask this question. To what extent is this canon? Does this all have your blessing? Should we take this as probably the truth in the books? What's going on? That's, I think, going to be quite important. But it's going to be almost impossible for us to have this stage play with the teasers that they've given us without us finding out at least one love match. Lovers meet up. Who's that going to be? If this is Rhaegar and Lyanna, then that's officially confirming something which in the books hasn't been officially confirmed yet. If it's Howland and Ashara, then I punch the air in the middle of the theatre and they chuck me out for whooping too loudly. There will learn things there. We will also almost certainly learn, but given the fact that the structure of this seems to be about, it was first of all called the Iron Throne, now it's the Mad King. We're all thinking about Rhaegar and Lyanna and Howland Reed and things like that. Actually, one of the main characters in this is going to be the Mad King. What is Rhaegar plotting? We think we know, but we will get confirmation of that in this. I can't see how they can do this stage play without having some sort of confirmation about what's going on there. What's Howland Reed up to? We will actually get to see Howland Reed. He's going to be a relatively central character, one would have thought. We will see a bit about what's going on there. We'll even learn that, so there are some throwaway comments by people like Sir Barristan when he's sort of saying, if only Rhaegar had trusted me, if only Ashara Dane had turned to me, not Stark. And it's just like, we think we know what those mean, but we couldn't be entirely sure. Who is the Stark that Ashara Dane turned to? What was it that Sir Barristan was hoping that he would be trusted with by Rhaegar? Those are the kinds of things that we should get confirmation on. The stuff that they might still leave, if George R. R. Martin wants this to be the case, they might still leave there as a, well, probably, but we can't say for certain, something like the Knight of the Laughing Tree. Who is the Knight of the Laughing Tree? I think that they can hint at it and they can suggest it and they can leave us in a place where we think we are pretty sure who it is without actually 100% having a big reveal. I'm taking off my helmet and haha, it is he. So that's there's a lot that they have to show us. There are some things that they could still keep back. And there will be another big pot of stuff that we simply had no idea was the case. Because for all of the centrality of the tourney at Harrenhal and for all of the things that we do know, George R. R. Martin has said, I could write a whole book about what happened at the tourney at Harrenhal. And a George R. R. Martin-sized book at that, a thick, thick book. There are things that are in his head that have never appeared on the page, stuff that happened there. What was going on with Jaime Lannister? Who knows? It's a big mystery. What was the story? I mean, was there a melee as well? What was going on in that? How was it that Rhaegar won the tourney? Was it that he was the best, or was there like um, an element of people? Can you pull your punch when you're jousting? Pull your tilt? I'm not entirely sure what you do, but you know the point is that was it that people were just not putting in the effort against him? Ranabimitra saying, thinking about me getting kicked out by security as I start cheering when Howland enters Ned's tent with a Shara inside it. Yeah, I would be fine. I will find it hard um, to hold back if some fondly held ideas are proven to be right. But as I've always said, I would be equally excited if they're proven wrong. Um, if we get the new information, and then I will be updating everything. And I should probably also say, just as a by the by, as people have asked me for a while, the Roberts Rebellion playlist. I've been kind of holding back for this. It is going to come back up online in the main channel. Um, I I've been holding out hope that we're going to be learning enough stuff from this that I get to rewrite quite a few of those videos. Certainly some of the earlier ones. And yeah, so expect to see that coming back online at some point over the summer. Curse Ballerina, was there any way, Rob Stark, was there any way for Rob to reject the king title without looking weak and therefore be easily able to ally with the Baratheons? I mean, I think it would be quite hard once two, three more people had all joined in. When you get one person um, doing it, then you could sort of go over to them, particularly when it's someone like Great John Umber. You can go over to them and just sort of like tap them on the shoulder, Great John's up there somewhere, but and just sort of say, thank you, I really appreciate that. But we're not doing that. You could do that when there's, but once you get popular acclamation, which is basically what happened, that's the point at which it's really hard to sort of say, no, 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 everyone just calm down. So he could have done it, but he had to nip it in the bud straight away. Um, that's now it's Key the Stallion. It's this. So okay, I can't read it. I'm afraid all the letters that are gone is something to do. It's something to do with the stallion. So saying I've been thinking about how George depicts brother relationships. My personal favourite is Stannis/Renly. Have you thought about this, especially concerning Rob's relationships with John, Bran, and Theon? Yeah, um, John, Rob, Bran, um, Rickon, John, Theon is I mean, they're not perfect, but it's one of the more well-adjusted sets of siblings that we've got in this story. It has to be said. The in terms of brother, you were just talking about brothers there, I think. So yeah, like that scene I read out a little bit earlier, when you actually see the love that Rob has for Bran. I mean, and another one that's really quite touching, obviously, is with Egg and Aemon, Egg on the Fifth and Maester Aemon. That clearly we have huge gaps in here in our knowledge here. We see kind of the very end with Maester Aemon looking back on it, and we see like the very beginning with Egg thinking about it, but we've never actually seen a scene of them both together. We kind of like heard descriptions of it, and yet we can tell there's love there. Um, but what I think he does do really quite well is show when you get characters that are brothers but are very different. but know how to wind each other up. I think the Stannis Renly one, I agree. It's really good. And Renly's Peach, I did a whole video on it. If you're interested in that, the scene is there when they have their sort of meeting before what they think is going to be a big battle, and Renly is offering Stannis peach, and then eats a peach, and Stannis is visibly annoyed by this, and afterwards he's talking to Davos about it, saying, only Renly can annoy me like that with a peach. What was he trying to say to me with this peach? And the answer seems to be it was just A, Renly wanted to eat a peach and enjoy life, and he likes peaches, and B, he knew it would wind up Stannis. So that works at such a great level. And then you see other siblings, Ned and Brandon, who work slightly differently. So yeah, I've not done a deep study on all of this, but I think what he does really well is he can show the bond between brothers, without making those brothers be the same people, if that makes sense. Let's go to, I think I have one more question in the chat. Maybe I didn't. No, I think I caught up in the chat. Let's go to another. I had one other question. Ranabin Mitra, you were asking also about the stage play, saying, considering this is the first time we're getting George R. R. Martin approved non-Maester and non-HBO lore since 2012, how are you, Robert, as a channel owner, deciding how to handle spoilers? The majority of the fandom won't see the play till max next year, and I don't want to ask questions in the Patreon and spoil things in the live chat or inadvertently break the spoiler policy. Yeah, I haven't come to a full conclusion on this one, it has to be said. I do need to, and I will let you know once I do. I would love to know, first of all, if you're watching this, you won't hear me if you're not watching this. If you're watching this live, put something in the chat right now. What you think, in terms of spoilers, and sharing the information about what's in there, or if you're watching this back a little bit later, put it down in the comments. I will read them all, I promise. I'm just trying to gauge a little bit of opinion on this. My instinct is that once we're a few nights into this, then with the best will in the world, information will be out there on the internet about this. I say that knowing that I'm not the only content creator who's going to be there. I know several others who will be there. I'll allow them to announce it themselves however they wish to do it, so I'm not going to sort of out them, but I know that there are going to be several other content creators there. People will be talking about this, and so I think probably me saying, well, I'm not going to do anything because I don't want to spoil it for people until everybody's had a chance to see it in a year or two's time, probably isn't going to be very helpful. Similarly, me deliberately not including information that we might get there in some of my videos is kind of like holding things back. So my instinct is to say I will probably stream about this after I watch the play. Although, can I put a little asterisk here? There's a big difference between watching a stage play and watching a TV show, in that you can't pause or rewind the stage play to say, oh, did they really say that? And added to which, the way they've set up, I explained it a bit earlier, the way they've set up the stage is kind of cross-shaped stage with people and dotted about, some basically at ground level, some looking down on it. It does mean you might miss stuff. I think it's going to be really immersive. There's going to be things coming from all different sides. But it does mean that you might, if you're looking over here, you might miss something that's going on over there. So the little asterisk I'm saying is that, yeah, I'm going to see it. But I have a feeling that what we're going to find coming out the other side is that I will have a series of stuff that I will have noticed. Somebody else will have a series of stuff that they've noticed, and there might be a couple of differences in there. But yeah, so my instinct is, if I do a live stream on it, just to flag it up, spoilers. I can put spoilers in the title. I can put spoilers at the bottom of the screen. I'm sure I can figure out how to do that, just so everybody knows. And so if you want to hold off, then you can just not watch those things. In essence, I think I'm going to treat it like a TV show. So if Night of 17 Kingdoms comes out, once it's out, I feel happy talking about it. I think this is probably the same. But let me know what you think in the comments. Let's have a quick look in the chat. Quick flick through. Spoiler Ray says Richard Tabor. Ranabin Mitra saying be good to get people's thoughts from my people. Spoil it. Just want to know what happens. Share, says Stephanie Frederick. Andrew K. Share the information with a warning for spoilers. Carl Karstark. I don't care about spoilers. I want to see the performances, etc. Spoiler way. Okay. I'm getting everybody saying just say. So Lady Pushkin saying I'm Stalls B, so quite close, I think. Is that Rob B? Yeah, probably is quite close. Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing at the risk of sort of being a theatre aficionado, my general rule is not to be like on the front row or two, because then you're sort of looking up a little bit at the action. And I personally prefer looking down at it all, but that's just me. As I said, I think one of the good things about this probably is going to be there in the middle of it, as it's all happening around you. Okay. Right, yeah, just flicking. So Carl Karstark just giving spoilers for Hamlet. I don't want to hear it. La 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 la. Actually, the last thing I saw at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre was Hamlet, and it was excellent. They had the entire. I mean, just here's me spoiling the production, but they had the entire at the end of it, the entire stage they had tilted up. They managed to slowly tilt it all the way up, and then the characters are kind of like sliding down. So the things they can do with that stage is pretty mind blowing. It has to be said. Kaz Ballerina asking, would Robb have executed John for desertion? Well, that's a really interesting question, isn't it? I think instinctively no. This is right at the beginning, if you remember, beginning-ish. And then John abandons the Night's Watch. He rides out. His friends gather him. In fact, Ghost, you might not pick up on this, but Ghost is the one who gives him away. He's telling Ghost, no, stop it, don't. But Ghost is like trying to make noise so that everybody knows where John is. Ghost does not want John to be leaving the Night's Watch. But anyway, he was going to go and help Robb because he's heard everything that's happened. I think Lord Mormont, he kind of turned a blind eye to it. He kind of accepted, you didn't properly go away. I understand the feelings there. It's okay. So he kind of turns a blind eye to it. Robb, I think, I mean, this is, as I say, I think this is a hard question because I think he wouldn't instinctively, because he is his father's son. And as much as we think of Ned Stark as being all about duty, actually what Ned Stark is all about is love for his family. But the problem would come if you get people around Rob who start grumbling and saying, you can't do this, you can't allow this guy in here. I think maybe what would happen is that John would have to be sort of saying, well, look, guys, I haven't actually sworn the staff. I'm not really a member of the Night's Watch. And then just wait for the war to finish before admitting, oh, actually, yeah, maybe I was. You might be able to get away with it. Right. So that's a quick flick through the chat. Bielemeier, do I think George R. Martin could attend the pre-show creative talk 5 days before the opening night? Maybe enjoy Stratford for a week-long trip. Stratford's delightful for those who've not been there. If you've got your tickets, what I'll just say is that try and get to Stratford for the morning. It's not a big place, but it's beautiful. You can go and see Shakespeare's birthplace. There's great walks up and down the river there. Some cracking pubs, some nice little restaurants. Make a little day of it. It's a fantastic place to go. As I say, I think a week is probably too long, but for a nice day trip out, I highly recommend it. I think George R. Martin will be there at some point. I do not know when. At some point, he will probably announce this. I think he'll want to see the play, and I assume he'll want to see it with the packed theatre rather than just like a private showing for people before and like a rehearsal or something like that. I mean, I don't know about him. For me, if this were me, I think I just want to experience what the audience are feeling, how they react. Because this is one of the things about theatre is it's not just about it's a big screen and there, but it's feeling the reaction of people when stuff happens. Where are they gasping? When do they laugh? What's the thing that gets it's completely silent for? So if I were him, I would definitely want to be there for a performance. I would guess first performance or last performance. I don't think he's going to want to hang around in Stratford for a week, but who knows? A couple of days, maybe. Let's go to question from Jerry Invincible saying, hello, Robert, long-time listener, but finally done what I should have done ages ago and become a patron. Which reminds me, well, first of all, thank you, Jerry. I hugely appreciate that. If you enjoy these live streams, if you'd like to support the channel, the best way to do that is still via Patreon. There's a link somewhere for you if you would like to do that, in which case I hugely appreciate it. This is why I shape these live streams around questions from my patrons, just by way of a thank you. And while I'm saying thank yous, let's do another thank you to the moderators. You're doing an excellent job. Show them a bit of love in the chat. But Jerry is saying, if you'll allow me an off-topic question, have you given any thought what you'll do if or when The Winds of Winter is released? It's been such a long time since stuff was released all in one go rather than drip feeding. So how will I approach it? And excited, got my tickets for the Mad King. Excellent. As for The Winds of Winter, I think I would probably to start with, I'll do exactly the same thing and ask people here what you want. I suspect the answer will be similar, as in just tell us the stuff. Two things I know. Thing number one, when it comes out, I'm going to book myself an Airbnb or a hotel room or something away from the world, and I'm just going to read it. I'm not going to leave the room until I've finished reading it. I don't care how long it takes. So that's the first thing. And then I shall probably listen to it after I've read it in hard copy. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I did have a bit of experience with this. So I was doing this when Fire and Blood came out, and the big learning point for me was what should have been obvious to me, which was, whereas I had the time to be able to immediately read through the thing and then start doing live streams on it, most people didn't have the time to devote an entire day to reading a book. They'll read it for an hour or so on a commute, and then they'll get through it in a couple of weeks. Some people have got to finish something else, and then they might have time when they're on holiday in a month's time. So not assuming knowledge from everybody, I think, is probably the first thing. But I suspect people will want some sort of combination of what I did last time: headlines, big stuff to start with, and then deeper dives into what's going on. I haven't thought about it in much detail. The Winds of Winter will come out when The Winds of Winter comes out. For the moment, it's The Mad King I'm most excited by. Right, let's go have a quick last look through the chat. And let's go. Book the Round Mitri saying, book the B&B on the Isle of Skye. A long way to go. Richard Tabor saying, isn't stage direction reversed in London versus in New York City? Yeah, absolutely. And when they do it in Australia, they have to put the set upside down. The Reflective Rambling, you were an actor. Did not know this. It's excellent stuff. Right, I think there we go. The theatre playlist is basically based off of the theatre play is based off of my playlist, Rhaegar, Lyanna, and all that. Well, here's hoping that'll be quite fun. Right. With that, let's. Sorry, Lady Pushkin saying, imagine if George is there when Robert is. I mean, all my Christmases at once. Right. I think with that, let's start thinking about stuff on the main channel I want to tell you about. Oh, I'm starting doing a new series, breaking down Aegon's invasion. I think the first one's coming out, I think it's tomorrow, some point soon. But yeah, so it's going to, I don't know, it might be 8, 9 part series. I just realized I'd never actually kind of fully broken it down for people. So yeah, we'll start out. What did the Seven Kingdoms look like before that? Why actually did Aegon invade? What was the actual trigger? And then we sort of start working our way through Harrenhal, the Field of Fire, things like that. So yeah, that's a series I've got that'll keep us going for a couple of months until we can pick up again with the stage play and then the Robert's Rebellion playlist, I think. So that's all to come. A Lord of the Rings stuff too. I think that's probably all I was going to say. I should plug one other thing. What should I be plugging? Let's plug Spotify and Facebook. If you want to watch my videos, the main channel videos, they're all being uploaded at the moment onto Spotify and onto Facebook. So I'm doing them one a day there, so they will catch up at some point, and then we'll get the same kind of release schedule. If I do something on YouTube, it'll come out as well at the same sort of time over on Facebook and Spotify. So that's the cunning plan, that we're just trying to get everything down. And if you can think of other places that I should be uploading stuff to, let me know down in the comments. But right, that is it. If you have got this far through the video, then appearing somewhere around here on YouTube at least will be a link to other live streams that I've done. Appearing somewhere around here, it's going to be a link to my Patreon page, which is still the best way to support this channel if you wish to do so, in which case, thank you. Okay, that is all for this time. We'll be back next time with, where do we get to? Bran? Rickon? I can't even remember now. Whoever we've not done already. And I think it's Bran. And Yeah, that's it. Take care, everyone, and I shall see you again same time next week.